Hello, I'm here today to answer a question that was asked by one of my patrons on Patreon. His question was, how would Yandere Simulator's storyline change if the Aishi family replaced the imperial family of Japan? It was an interesting question, and I had fun considering the answer. In fact, I put so much thought into it that I decided to turn my answer into a video. Let's begin. The Aishi family is a bloodline that is characterized by a mysterious hereditary condition. Members of this bloodline are plagued with a perpetual feeling of being empty, hollow, and incomplete. They are emotionally numb and cannot experience life the same way that normal people do. There is no known cure for this condition, but there is one thing that can temporarily allow an Aishi to feel normal. For some mysterious reason, a very small number of people are able to trigger something called the senpai effect when coming into physical contact with a member of the Aishi bloodline. While experiencing the senpai effect, an Aishi will no longer feel numb, empty, or hollow. She will feel complete for the first time. She will feel alive for the first time. This will cause the Aishi to develop a deep physical and psychological dependence on the person who triggers these feelings inside of her. An addiction more powerful than any drug. An Aishi who has experienced the senpai effect will become willing to do absolutely anything to possess that person and stay by their side forever. I know exactly how the Aishi condition works and how it came into existence, but the details are some pretty big spoilers, so I won't be revealing the information anytime soon. The only thing I'll say is that the first woman to experience the Aishi condition, a woman who I call the first Aishi, was not born in Japan, but migrated to Japan in 1796. So, what exactly was the Aishi family doing between 1976 and modern day? Well, many of them were serial killers, exactly like Ayano and Ryoba. Once they encountered someone who triggered the senpai effect, they became yandere and killed anyone else who loved that person. This means that most members of the Aishi bloodline developed the skills necessary to get away with murder and avoid detection by authorities. Thus, most Aishi probably worked as assassins or spies. I imagine that the Aishi family tried very hard to stay in the shadows and had no wish whatsoever to be recorded in Japanese history. But what if they didn't have a choice? What if a member of the Japanese imperial family triggered the senpai effect in an Aishi? What if an Aishi made it her life's goal to marry into the Japanese imperial family, and she succeeded? What if an Aishi born into the Japanese imperial family eventually inherited the throne and became the reigning empress of Japan? Well, the Aishi family doesn't know how their condition originated, but they do know that they have a soulmate and that they will feel empty until they find him. So, as the ruling family of the nation, they would come up with some way to expedite their encounter with their soulmate. For example, as Japan's ruler, the Empress Aishi could announce that all men in the Japanese capital city must attend a mandatory ceremony where they must pledge their allegiance to the country's princess by touching her hand one by one. This ceremony would allow a young Aishi to come into physical contact with thousands of men, which would eventually result in finding someone who triggers the senpai effect. the Empress could then use her authority to invent some arbitrary reason for that man to live with the imperial family from that day onwards. In other words, if the Aishi family became the most powerful family in Japan, they could invent an effective, systematic method for discovering their senpai without publicly revealing the true nature of their condition or attracting any suspicion. This means that once in a position of power, the Aishi bloodline would probably never need to become serial killers or develop murder skills ever again, unless they decide to pass down their assassination knowledge to each new generation in secret. Anyway, if the Aishi family replaced the imperial family of Japan, they would discover their senpais through imperial ceremonies rather than relying on happenstance in school settings. This means that if the Aishi family was royalty, the game's storyline as we know it would probably never happen. That's the answer to the question from the beginning of this video. I owe everything to the people who are supporting me on Patreon. So whenever one of my patrons asks me a question, I try to answer with as much detail as possible. I won't make an elaborate video to answer every question that a patron asks me, but if your question is especially interesting and I think it would be very fun to answer, you might just get a video like this one. Thank you for following the development of... Wait a minute. This video wasn't about development. Alright then, in that case, thank you for following the hypothetical alternate timeline lore of Yandere Simulator.